So there are two types of people in this world, and let me tell you the two types, how they affect what we do. So you have, and obviously I'm joking, there's more than two types, but you get the idea. So let me tell you about two types of people. Let me put it this way. I'll tell you about two types of people in the fitness industry, outside the fitness industry, in business, and how it relates to the fitness industry. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and he was showing that the guy was talking about the fact that the academic world is an institution that got rid of the free thinkers, right? That's been going on for a while. And now you're at a stage where a free thinker growing up cannot find a place in the academic world. Like someone like me will never be able to go through the stages. Because imagine me trying to get a PhD toward biology on the study of lactate. So I get into the first stage, and lactate is a waste product. You can imagine how well I would do in a classroom. I'd be like, sorry, I don't understand. And from there, I get fired within 2 weeks, right? It would never work. Like whenever my daughter asks me to help her with biology, because right now she's doing evolution and stuff like that, it's a lot of fun. I can only imagine the face of the teacher whenever she asks the question that I tell her to ask. Anyway, I like to mess with people, as you can imagine. So, I would not do well in that environment. And on this, I think the academic world is the next institution to fall. Like we saw in 2008, the banking industry showing its flaws. I think the next one, honestly, is the academic world. Like they're going at a way that is impossible to continue. So what they created really is the world where only people that have a certain mindset can succeed. And people have a certain mindset, create a system where only they can succeed. And before you know it, the thing starts to pick up momentum and it justifies itself in that way, because then only the people from that mindset can be hired. So then therefore it shows that the system works. Well, yeah, it works at getting better for the people that belong in it. And then the people that don't get excluded further and further away. So the system in that sense works very well. And so what they would tell you that it is science or it is this or it is that, well, it's actually not true. It's really, what this is really is their vision of the world. Sorry, stop showing your butt to everybody, my dear. What it is really, what they're really winning at is showing that their vision of the world is the correct one. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk about two different types of people. You see that in business. Like, for example, you have the person has a business, has a vision in a way for it, and that vision is I want to do what I want to do, what I enjoy doing, and I'm going to push forward. Usually those people, for example, my father-in-law is one. He had his coffee business in the sense where he was selling coffee machines, right? And that's actually I met Jenny and I went through him. Because I went there to buy my coffee machine, and then we spent like 6 hours in the store. Like I'm exaggerating, but I spent a good 3 hours in the store, and I must have drunk like 10 espresso that day because we try every machine, we try every coffee grinder. I was very excited by the end of the day, probably close to a panic attack. But and he's a guy, and then we connected right away because we saw the world the same way, which is. Find a passion, at least something you enjoy doing, right? Truly enjoy doing, because that's the only way, at least for me and for Paul, my father-in-law, that's the only way you will get good at something, because you will put the hours in it that you just won't if you don't enjoy it. And I'm sure a lot of you coaches can relate to that, right? That passion you put in something is what makes you good at it, because then it's not about the hours you spend at work. It's the hours, it's the seconds you spend outside of work. And you know what I mean when I say seconds. I mean those passionate seconds where you really think about your craft, about you, about how good of a coach you are, all that stuff outside of work. Where those are the moments where you get better. Sorry, my cat is shedding, so it's all over my face. Those are the seconds, the minutes that matter. But it's a very specific type of person who does that. Like, for example, like on a business, you'll see those type of people struggle for years, right? Trying to make it, not making that much money, because that's not how the thing works. Is you have to build the base of the pyramid first. You have to establish the connection with people. You have to learn your craft, by the way. How about that? You have to learn to be good at what is it that you're doing. That takes time. And in the meantime, you don't make that much money because you're just not good yet. That's just the way it is, right? And that takes time, that takes work, that takes so much passion. And all that happens at a slow rate, right? And then eventually, one day, you get the reward for it. It might take, and it will usually take years, but then one day you wake up and you have what you always wanted, which means you built your own business. It's working well for you. It's giving you the life you want to have, and things flow, and you're happy, and you're a craftsman at what you do, and you keep getting better. You know your business inside out, just like a captain of the ship knows everything there is to know about their ship, right? From beginning to end. But that comes to struggle, right? That it takes time, basically. Basically, the bottom line is it takes time to get there. And that's one type of people. And then you have another type of people that are more the Google Sheet type of person, right? The people that are very, structured, very like, this is how things work. They like to look at things from a plus or minus perspective, just like a Google Sheet. Those are your accountants. Those are your CFOs. Those are your more money people, right? And then they'll go into a business, and then those are the one I will say, well, look, like this is losing money versus this is winning money, and then this is how you create. This is how you shave some. This is where the cuts needs to be made versus how to maximize this part, or things like this. You'll notice that one is more of a long-term perspective and the other one is more of a short-term perspective, right? Which means the money people will come and will be able to maximize the profit right now. But because of the short time nature of their, in that sense, almost their personality, of the way they look at the world, what you will see really is that they cannot, almost by definition, be craftsmen, because some things you have to learn through mistakes. Like you have to accept sometime to take a -1 loss if it means a +5 later, right? But how do you know that at the time? How do you know at the -1 at that moment that you will turn into a +5 later? Well, you don't. You're going on intuition. You're going into like, look, you have to let me make the mistakes so that I can learn from them. I have to learn the craft. I know like this way of doing things might not be good right now, but I feel like one day it will bear fruits. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. None of this is nearly as steady, is nearly as easy to see on a Google Sheet. The thing with a Google Sheet too is that you will be less anxious because everything is on paper. You have a plus, you have a minus, you can draw a statistics, and everything is fine, right? The problem with that is honestly the three types of lies. There's damn lies, and then there's statistics. I can't remember who said that, but I thought it was very funny because it's very, very true. And that's the problem with all this, is that is not how the world works. And all this, to go back to a simple point about the fitness industry, is like, who do you think is winning right now? Which type of personality do you think is winning throughout the fitness industry? Is it the Google Sheet people that give you macros on nutrition for the 6-week course, or they give you programming for the next 12 weeks on exercises going from 60% all the way to 103%, that sell you the certainty of 105% at the end of that cycle because you did everything right, and if they're wrong, that's your fault, it's not them. The people that sell you a solution whether you have that problem or not, are those the people winning, or are the coaches who learn their craft as they go, who are very, very passionate about what they do, but not always the best business sense, by the way, but very passionate about what they do, who are evolving by making mistakes, trying to understand the human behind the six-pack instead of just, sacrificing the long-term health of someone just to give them a short-term performance. Who do you think of the two archetypes? Who do you think is winning, right? I think it's fairly obvious. And I am reminded of that constantly because, for example, as I was going into the sprint world and then seeing the athletes, there is still that idea, sorry, my cat again, that of course. Sorry, there's a break in the podcast because you're going to stay right there, aren't you? Yeah, there you go. So there is that idea that, for example, like if you want performance, you have to accept being hurt, or you have to accept being miserable, or things like this, which I find so disturbing. But what I find also very interesting is that the people that tell you that belong in category number 2. Those are your accountants that tell you that you have to be hurt to perform, that you have to sacrifice to perform. And those are the same people that tell you that you have to grind, that whether you like something or not, you have to do it anyway. You have to race tomorrow whether you like it or not. You have to do this whether you like it or not. But do you not find it strange that the way they tell you to train mimic their lives? That is really not about science or training. It's about the way they see the world. And how do they see the world? Well, they are accountants, so they see the world as either a plus or a minus. As I can't believe for a second anybody has fun doing that stuff. So it's the same grind type mentality that they're just applying to training. So I don't think they're telling you to train that way because the training is better. I think they're telling you to train that way because that's the way they see life. And then for them, the only progress can come from grinding. Like, for example, you see a lot of lawyers, doctors, academics are fascinated with endurance, right? That's when, if you go to your local triathlon club, you will see people of a certain social class, and God knows there's a lot of money in triathlon. If you look at how much the bike costs, it's insane. But you will see doctors, lawyers, surgeons, you'll see academics, you'll see that type. Because the activity of the triathlon fits exactly their behavior in their professional lives. And it fits exactly the behavior that they have in their personal life as well, which is the grind. Like, for example, as a lawyer or whatever, like the pride comes from working 100 hours a week and never showing fatigue, showing that you love what you do, showing that you're fatigued or having any moment of doubt or everything is a sign of weakness. Right, that's their sign of weakness. Whereas if you look at the passionate coach or things like this, the sign of weakness is not caring. A coach not caring for their athletes, people, members, whatever you want to call it. A sign of weakness would be someone who mailed it in, right? Who's just doing the work, who's working 10 hours a day without ever caring whether their people get better or not. That, to people like me, obviously, so people like us, the sign of weakness is that he's doing it for the money, right? He's coaching for the money. Like this, just go into the banking industry. You don't need to be in a coaching industry if you're doing it for the money. That's not what the fitness and money. Like, you can make money, obviously, but it's not. You know what I mean? That should not be the goal number one. So you'll see that the sign of weakness are seen based on really what your professional, social life, your overall view of the world is. And I feel like this is something that does not want to be talked about, at least out loud. For example, in the world of sports, is that too many times the progression, the programming that we see, the periodization is not so much based on science as they tell you, as much as on the view of the world. And honestly, you see that in academics as well, right? If you look at the great science conversations of the 20th century, for example, what is called the Copenhagen interpretation in quantum mechanics, were done almost on a philosophical view of the universe, obviously backed by science, but there was way more than that. Like Einstein and Schrödinger on one side were just fundamentally disagreeing with Niels Bohr on what is called a Copenhagen interpretation meant toward the reality of the world. And to Einstein, there was a logical impossibility there. But when we talk about logical, it's epistemology, right? It's philosophy in that sense. And that impacts things far more than you think. So you will see a lot now on YouTube and all that stuff, people talking about science. I can tell you a lot of that stuff, it just depends, I guess, what you call science. But science really is predictions versus observation, right? And so in that case, it's prediction versus observation in the sense of their prediction is what they saw in their life, right? And what they learned from it, which is called a bias, a prior. And they will train a certain way because it fits an overall behavior. And so for those people, that type of grind, that type of things will work well. But not everybody belongs in that category. So to me, they're just using more and more the word science to justify something that's worked for a specific type of behavior. And it's true, by the way, like that type of training can work for a specific type of behavior. What I want us as coaches to go toward moving forward is the understanding that behavior and training are deeply, deeply linked. And I'm not talking psychology, I'm talking linked all the way up to the physiological level, which is something I've been trying to say forever. I talk about the nervous system, but it goes deeper than that. It goes all the way up to Maxwell's demon that I made a podcast about. There is a deep, deep relationship between your training, your behavior, and your life. Like your life behavior will affect your behavior in the gym and vice versa. If we keep doing a burn the question type workout on someone and keeping them into that fail mechanism because they can never go past a certain point, all we're doing is giving them more anxiety, not less. I see it constantly. So there's a way to adapt all this, right? But too many times now I see the fitness industry putting people in boxes. You do this, you get that very deterministic way. And that's just an accountant way of dealing with training. That's all. It's not necessarily correct. It just looks scientific because that's what the academics world is right now. It's a bunch of accountants that likes to have sheets with plus and minuses. Why? Because the world is simpler that way. Just like a lawyer have those words that they use, just like a doctor has a sheet with the numbers. And more and more we see that type of people who want the world to be simple. I would say want the world to be simplistic, right? And to go through by using sheets and removing the human element out of things. And I got news for you, it can't be done. You can't deal with humans if you remove what makes them human in the first place. So too many times I see people using science just as the way to see that they want an accountant view of training or behavior or whatever, because it's easier for them to deal with. That's all. But it has nothing to do with science. And it does not necessarily have to do with training people. Again, some people will do well under that type of things, but not everybody will. And so if you're on the side, like me, of someone who's more of a craftsman, who likes to do things over more the long run and everything, keep being that. Don't go toward the accountant side because it's short term, and it won't work for you. Like, you're going to be told that you need to be a little bit of both. You can't suck at business completely, obviously. You cannot not understand how to be a bit more rigorous into what you do. I agree fully 100% with that. But if you start to drift yourself thinking you're going to be both at the same time, you're mistaken. Then you will lose what makes you you, and you'll become just a weaker version of yourself that will fail. So the key is hang on to your intuition. Hang on to what you feel is right. Hang on to your passion. Move forward. It takes time. It takes longer if you approach it like that, but at the end, you'll do better. And more importantly, you'll do what you want, the way you want it, and you'll be successful that way. Don't let them tell you that there's only one way to succeed. That is not true. They are not superior to you because they have Google Sheets, right? It's just a simplified, simplistic way of looking at the world that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Just like your way of doing things. It works in some cases, it doesn't work in others. The key is we can learn based on that, based on behavior, the type of training, the type of approach we should have for people. So that means that all the training should be based on behavior, on a person's identity and behavior, not the other way around. I hope that makes sense. Talk to you guys.